Hello, everyone. This is Justin Cobb coming to you from Arlington, Virginia, and welcome to another episode of Insight. There today, I have a special guest. Her name is Birgitta Granstrom. And Birgitta is this wonderful human being who founded the Weird Ones, which focuses on neurodiversity and working with those with different neurological conditions. Birgitta, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me on here. I am super happy, super proud, and curious what wants to happen today. Justin,
Yeah,
thank
of course. Birgitta, can you give people a sense of what it is that you do so that way audiences can understand the impact of it?
you. Okay, so since I but do belong to the weird ones myself, there is a lot to tell. So I think I will stay focused on what's connecting to the weird ones, because I see the weird ones are the future leaders, and those are exactly what we need right now. And so my entire life, I grew up back in Sweden, uh, and I've just been in the US and California, now in Oregon for 15 years. And I found my power place here. And so I'm doing really, really well. But back in Sweden, when I was a little kid, grew up on the countryside, I have those questions. I said before, I really wonder about people's behavior and what's going on with the universe, those big questions. And I have been searching answers ever since. And so my entire life, I built, and I didn't know until maybe I was 30 years old that I was creating something, because information is coming as a weird one. You have connection to and information, and you don't know where it comes from, but you love to put things in boxes to understand, to dive deep, and to do the research to understand why and what is life about. So I discovered something that I now call the Life Spider system. That is a life management system for a weird one's brain. That is a completely new psychology that goes beyond Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And for the weird ones, it's for a neurodivergent brain. It's about you have 6 different life purposes instead of one, as the most people think you have. And from those, you also have to work with your embrace and express your ego, because as a weird one, you want to do good for the world. I mean, you have a natural desire from the beginning. You know, I'm here for a special reason. There is a purpose with my life. And most of the time, you don't have any response or feedback from other people, but it's there. And this life spider is helping you as a weird one to say, okay, so this is me. It kind of put your magnifying glass on you with your complete DNA, and find all the purposes and projects and everything is in order.
Oh,
So
wow.
I get lost. And this is also something, so Justin, you have a job to drag a weird one's mind in back to the point where we started, because it's moving on fast.
Oh, no, you're good. I'll gladly bring that back in for you. So, one of the things I'm always curious about with this, you started the Weird Ones in order to help people understand neurological diversity.
Mm.
And for neurological diversity for folks, in order to get a sense of what that means, either correct me or please feel free to chip in anything that I'm missing. But at least from what I've gathered and understood, all people are neurologically diverse, but not everyone has ADHD, not everyone has autism, and all these other. There are people, some people like, and even the term like some people reference it as a disability. And I know that that can be controversial depending on who you're asking. There's so much nuance in all of this. But is that typically a good understanding of looking at this?
It's absolutely correct. And I say, I mean, it's the same to say every individual are individual. I mean, everyone has a different fingerprints. That's no question about. We don't even should be able have to discuss that. You have your own set of skills, experience that makes you really unique. And every single human being deserves to express your unique trait of those who you are. But when we are talking about the neurodiversity, and the reason why I choose to call them the weird ones is that the neurodiversity has become, and especially those labels, has become an expression for non-neurodiversity people to understand them and try to put them back in a box. And so it has been, so okay, so back, so, and the weird ones, the meaning of the word, I think that's also something important, and I didn't know when I started to call them the weird ones, but when you look up in the dictionary, it stands for have the power to control destiny. So it's a really old English German word from the beginning, and then it has translated to something that's odd, awkward, disgusting, and things like that, but actually something to be proud of, because you have it is a special kind of creature that's born with a different awareness, a different consciousness, and that you absorb information so much quicker, and you kind of operate in different dimensions simultaneously. And that's why you can, and most of the people said you want to have put the label, you are ADHD, you are autist, you are this some kind of other disorder, but it's just the most of them have a combination of those labels that the average people want to put on them. So it's to and that's just to put them in a box. And I get seriously upset when you keep on talking about the disorder, because this is just a function that's so much more brilliant than the average person will never ever reach. And then to try to understand it, they have to call it a disorder.
I love the fact that you referenced the origins of the word weird in your answer, because it really does speak to a lot of understandings that, and it's not just with neurological diversity, but in all forms of diversity, how we basically, you took the word weird and used it as an example of owning yourself and your authenticity and your destiny, and vilified it and shamed it and turned it into something that is odd and different, rather than owning it. I'm actually working with a wonderful woman over in the UK who is Nigerian in origin, and she and I were briefly talking about how in Nigeria, neurodivergence is understood differently, at least before colonial contact. It was so fascinating how colonialism has been shaping the way people are understanding neurological conditions for millennia. Yeah, and like to segue back into the relevancy of this, I love how you're bringing up this conditioning and the dehumanization that people, the weird ones, have been through for millennia and generations. This is not a new phenomenon, and people think that people with autism and ADHD and all these other conditions are new. They blame the vaccines, they blame all these medical advancements for it, but that's not true. Like, can you, like, is there any of that you can touch on with us?
Absolutely. If you just look on the biggest invention in the world, I mean, and I can see spontaneous, let's say Beethoven, Mozart, Da Vinci, Einstein. Who else do we have? They really belonged to the weird one because they had a weird brain. And for Einstein, example, he is, maybe you think he was a logical person with a really logical brain, but he got his biggest invention ideas when he was just had his eyes up in the sky. That's when everything. So he did this download of information, and then he took the information and make it into formula, math, and everything, and do the combination. So and on the 1200s centuries, they burned the witches on ball. We call them witches, because they had a special talent that other people didn't have. So it has been forever. It's just that since the evolution of humanity is that you can see the crowd of the weird ones is growing. I think I read some research report about autism. Soon it's, I don't know how many percent it was, but soon it's too many who are labeled with autism. So it's meaningless to even use the label anymore. And that's true. We have to accept that the human brain is evolved. So even the average person gets smarter, more increased consciousness, and that combined when the weird ones consciousness increase, the ability and the all the skills they have also increase. So we are changing. And the problem we have right now is that we or the normies, I call the normies, is trying to keep things as it was before. And that's why they are trying to do the labels and even medicate someone's personality, which, I mean, that's stupidity. Instead of see, okay, this is an underfunction brain. And I don't see, I mean, when we talk about the spectrum, some needs more help than others, more assistance than others, but there's also the biggest group of those labeled people are highly function creative, who is not thinking the linear system, but have a chaos theoretical principles when they do their thinking and creativity. And that's, I don't know, they have to take me back now. So it has always existed, and we just have been aware of the crowd is growing, and we need to help. So this was my point I would have come to. So we need to see that this is what's happening, and we need to communicate between, we need to build a bridge. And it's the same for the weird ones. The weird ones have not just to be upset or the normies, because we have to understand they can't grasp our way of thinking. And since you have a higher level of consciousness or awareness, you are responsible to make other people understand you. And now I think that's not a good balance now either, because the neurodiverse, oh, we need help, we need assistance, but we need to build a bridge to communication in both ways, and we need to work together.
I love how this is about taking ownership of our journeys and our destinies. That is literally what you mentioned before about the weird ones, is taking ownership of yourself. I love that.
Mm.
Birgitta, because here's the thing. Autism, ADHD, all these other neurological conditions have been misunderstood far longer than either you or I have been alive in any of this. And we did not grow up with the automatic, oh, hey, you have this condition, yay, we celebrate you. Like, I'm sure you could attest to this.
I can.
What
Yeah.
was your journey of recognizing that you were a weird one? And that, like, what was that like?
Oh, it's a good thing. And it took me a while before I understood that because for one of my skills is that I see and feel and know how other people think. I can see the consequences of the behavior. I can see the reaction when you say something. I can see it and I can do the analyze. And I did that when I was a kid. So when I was in a first grade, I was the therapist for all my classmates, kind of. And I couldn't understand, why do they have this problem? Would they come and ask me, how can I do this? Or we have the love problems, and I say, you do this, and it worked. And it took me a while when I realized they don't think like me. What's the problem? Could it be so hard? So that took me a while. And then I started to realize I would say the really point when I realized there are more than me. And I think I was maybe old 30 something, 30, 35, even more. And I get into this phenomena that they call the indigo people.
Mhm.
So indigo people is, and here I will give a credit to Nancy Ann Tapp, who was the woman she's gone now. Who passed away 2008, and I actually did met her. But she started, and I don't know, so maybe this was doesn't matter, a long time ago, decades ago. And I saw a definition of these indigo people that are born, but it was more from a spiritual point of view. And then I realized, oh shit, I could do all the check boxes. I just said, aha. And I am not alone. There are others who have the same kind of thinking, who see the words, who ask the bigger questions, who have these existential questions as a normal thing. And So that was kind of an one of the biggest moments when you realize, oh, and suddenly I understood everything, all the conflicts, treatments, resistance, and everything that's been going on in my life and in my childhood. Because sorry, you go on.
Oh, no, go there. Please finish.
That was funny because I made conscious decisions when about 10 years old. I need to raise myself because this is not working. So I had a better understanding of my deeper psychology than anyone else in my. So I raised myself and I set my own boundaries, and so that's what the decision. And I made that when I was really, really young.
What you're speaking to is this kind of wisdom that I know in my family people would look at me as if I had two heads, and they would definitely consider me a weird one at that point. But what you're talking about is really getting to the heart of what is actually going on. This is about it cutting through the noise and understanding that these issues, what we're dealing with, is not new.
No.
The technology is new. The level of impact that we now have is new, but we are dealing with very old issues that have been haunting humanity since we were evolving in Africa and moving around.
Yeah, I don't know that far away so I have to listen to the podcast, and so I'm curious about how it looked so far away back. But no, it's not. It's the only thing we have heard is that we have been different. We have been too much, too fast. We cannot focus, and all this nagging at us. You have to change. It has been something wrong, and you put way back. You put people in the hospital and lock them in the white robes and things like that. So we have coming a long way. That it has started to be accepted. So even if the neurodivergence has become a box, it's better when it was not a box at all. So it has moved, and it's moving in the right direction. It's an openness. They moved the evolution forward. So
and you and I were talking about this in one of our previous calls, but you correct me if I didn't understand right, but you yourself were adopted into a family, if I'm not mistaken, right? So
correct.
even that journey I can only imagine what that must have been like for you, because it's not like you had a reference point to go off of to say, oh, I'm like this because so-and-so in my family. And I tell people all the time, adoption in that of itself is a very complicated thing. It has a lot of beautiful elements to it, but it also has a lot of terrible things in it too. And there's a lot to unpack in it. Can you walk me through what that experience was like for you, and like even just like navigating this from the perspective of, wow, I don't know if I can find anyone who can relate to me in that way.
I think as a kid, it was more that you weren't like anybody else because you were adopted. So I always had this, I had to be excused. Oh, it's my mom, but it's not my real mom. I had always had to excuse myself. I didn't really belong where I grew up. So I have this, it's kind of, I have to excuse myself. I felt the urge to tell everybody, no, it's not my real parents, or this is blah, blah. And I always had a question, wonder how my parents look like, and I made up stories that were also interesting with the weird ones, how you can feel the connection where you come from. Because I remember I was kind of 4 or 5 years old, and I was playing with this. My parents told me I was playing with, and I sat and was lying and told about my real mother was from Germany and blah, blah, and I made up those fancy stories. And I always read the books about the Second World War, the Jewish, and everything. I absorbed that information. And when I was 20, I found my biological parents, and it showed up that my mother was from Germany, and her parents were probably disappeared in South Germany during the Second World War, and she came as refugees to Sweden. So, and that's how how could you know? But that's the problem was, you didn't belong. So you had to be grateful that you had somewhere to live and etc. So I think so I was odd there too.
Hmm.
I,
It's so much to navigate. I'm curious because what were like some of the challenges that you experienced even in your career with these regards? What did you notice when you were in your working spaces?
I think it's been most of the time, I think it has been my problem has been that I've been, before I really could control it, and I knew it. If I had knew I was a diverse one, I would have run, because I started my first business when I was in my 30s something, before early, and I had lots of employees. I mean, at one point I had 300 employees, and my biggest problem was that besides that I wasn't an good leader, but a lousy manager. But I also work in the future because I could see the possibilities. And I put all my staff in 2 big suits and then when they couldn't fulfill my wishes and I left to move on to the next project, I left them behind. And that's obviously not how it works when you run a business. And I had no idea. But the urge in me to find new possibilities, to grow, to expand, and I couldn't resist that. But it wasn't. It was a real problem in my businesses I have when I run my own and had to deal with lots of stuff, because it wasn't fair to them. And for the most of people, they probably experience and probably still do. I'm too much. You have to slow down. Too much going on.
Was there a failure that you learned from in particular?
All the time, I would say, because I have 2 bankruptcy behind me back in Sweden. That depends on that. I couldn't stick to this with goal settings and to have people, and I couldn't. I'm a lousy manager because I can't set the right kind of goals and hold someone else accountable. Because as me, I'm a rebel. I would never follow any rules, and that's why I have had a really hard time to even think that someone else could follow my rules and say, do this, do that, because, oh, no, I don't feel I'm tired. Okay, go and do something else. So, and that's not, so I have had conflicts, but we have always had lots of fun. It has been a really open environment. Everyone has been, so we had lots of fun, but business wise, it hasn't been that wise, because and that's why you, as a weird one, you need to partner up with those who can complement your skill. I mean, everyone needs that, but as a weird one, you really need to see, okay, you have those abilities, but if you can't hold yourself back, I mean, I'm wiser right now. So you need to fill that space.
I tell people all the time that the most beautiful thing that you can do for yourself is to own your power and to take full pride in your gifts because you are instilled them for a purpose and a reason. And it goes beyond even like saying, oh, God gave you this. God, no God, whatever. Like the thing is, you have these gifts, and what are you here for? You are here to live in service and in community with others. Owning your gifts and using them in service to others is it's a beautiful thing, but it's not an easy journey. What were some of the, because you talked about some of these setbacks, but I'm curious, what did you do in order to really overcome these? Like, what helped you with that?
Before we get in, one thing I was thinking, I think the hardest part for a weird one, or at least my experience, is that you never really get a credit for your skills, because in this world you measure it in the visible, what's here and now, and the money and all those things, and no one really don't understand your brilliant ideas. They can't caught up in you can see where the future is going and you try to implement something and no one is there to support you. So there are so many, you have ideas, and then no one is supporting you, and then you can see 10, 15 years later, they are coming with a business idea and they made a great business of it. I think that's something the most an entrepreneurial weird ones can recognize themselves in. So that has been the hardest part, and actually still is. Before now, I feel I have the sanctuary among the weird ones, and that's totally different to have other people understand what you say. And even if they don't understand you, they support you because they understand the principle behind. So now, can you repeat your question?
Yes.
Sorry.
So what did you do to overcome these challenges? So like, what did you or yeah, first let's start there. What did you do to overcome these challenges?
For me, it has probably been from the beginning. My favorite things to do is to think, and I've been a thinker and I've been a writer. So I have had the best conversation and dialogues with myself. So I think that's my, so you develop a survival instinct, and you don't rely on anyone. So at one point early in life, when people start talking about trust, I don't even know what I literally didn't understand the meaning of the word, because you don't trust and can rely on anyone else. It's you and your bubble. So I think that's one. I think I made that before when I put myself in the bubble. When I saw my mother was there standing and talking and nagging as it told me to do something. No, she wasn't the mean person at all, but she was just a normie and trying to make me do things. And when I realized, okay, I could set kind of a bubble and where it's a vacuum, and I could see what's happening, but I didn't have to listen. So I really learned how to filter information, and I learned to protect myself for what kind of information is hitting me personally. So I think that's also why I am doing what I'm doing, and why I get into why building those systems, because I learned it from the beginning. So I think that was my survival. I found my own solutions, and of course I read a lot, everything. I was I don't know how many thousands books I have read, and I was thinking and I was writing.
What did you learn from these setbacks? What did they teach you?
Let's see. Or I mean, to me, it's kind of the natural learning process, learning by doing. And I think also that I can be annoying to people because I see possibilities in everything.
Wow, what an amazing story. I'm so grateful that Birgitta Granstrom decided to come on to the show today. Fabulous human being. Be sure to check out her profile, look up the weird ones, check out the Life Spider Academy. It's phenomenal. Her work is incredible. I'll leave links for you all in the comments. Stay tuned for an interview with Birgitta Granstrom part 2. If you are enjoying this content, be sure to like and to subscribe. Feel free to leave your comments. Spread the word and share us. Insight is here, and we are here to bring the world closer together through the power of our stories. Be sure to follow Insight on our various platforms, including our Medium and our Spotify, where you will find exclusive content you won't find anywhere else. Be sure to stay tuned for more insight. We got more of it coming. Until then, be well.